We're going to start with introduction to the subject of microbiology. So, micro, what does that mean? Micro. Small, very small. How small? Don't give me numbers. Like, what is micro? Yes, you can see it with the naked eye. Okay, so that would include such small things as, say, viruses, like this poliovirus, size about 20-30 nanometers. Okay, to large viruses, to bacteria, to some of the unicellular organisms like algae or fungi, like yeast. You can see yeast with the naked eye, the individual cells. To actually much larger multicellular organisms like helminths. Surprisingly, helminths are still considered to be a subject of microbiology. Any ideas why? What are helminths, first of all? What are helminths? Helminths. Helminth. Worms. Yes, they're pretty big. Some of them like 40 feet long. So why are they still in the microbiology? It's very practical. Huh? They have no. How many nursing students or any other health profession students are here? Yeah, a lot. Okay, why do you take this course? Well, it's required, obviously. But why else? Why is that required? What microbes do? What do they cause? There you go. Helminths cause disease. So microbiology that we're going to talk about, we're going to focus mostly on the clinical things, clinical manifestations, okay? Clinically relevant microbes. Does that make sense? Helminths cause disease. And they are infectious. That's another thing about microbes, especially clinical microbiology. We talk about infection. We talk about parasites. We talk about organisms that live at the benefit of the host, that harm the host at the same time. Okay, yes. We're going to talk a little, and I will give you some examples when the relationship is kind of fuzzy. So it's kind of both bad and good at the same time. Generally speaking, microbes can be seen with a light microscope, like the ones that are in the cabinets there. Some of the microbes, not so much. Most of the viruses cannot be seen with a light microscope. Okay? And again, as Mackenzie said, they cannot be seen with the naked eye, but helminths can be. So it's a little bit of an exception. Okay? And what are the classes of microbes? Well, everybody heard about bacteria. You can see different shapes of bacterial cells in this picture. Okay? You can see the spherical cocci, the elongated bacilli, slightly curved rod-shaped vibrios, something in the middle, Coccobacillus, and spirillum and spirochetes. Spirilla and spirochetes are pretty much the same, and we will see that a lot of time name refers to a shape. Have you heard about Staphylococcus? Right? Coccus actually in Greek, it means grape. So grape-shaped. Staphylococci are spherically shaped microbes. Streptococci, spherically shaped. You probably have heard about disease like anthrax. It is caused by the microbe called Bacillus anthracis. Well, guess what? It has this shape. Make sense? So shape helps us to classify bacteria. Bacteria do not have nucleus. They're all prokaryotic. Prokaryotic organisms, what else do they mean? What else they do not have? They don't have nucleus, and they don't have something else. Organelles, membrane-bound organelles. And they are unicellular. Always. Okay? It does not mean that if you will take the bacterial sample, you will find just one cell. You can have clusters of them. But what is one of the major differences between truly unicellular and truly multicellular organisms? Multicellular organisms, their cells do something that unicellular organisms don't. All cells divide in a different way, but they all divide. They all make ATP. When the person is like a loner, person that like considered to be totally alone, this person does not have what? Huh? Yes, interaction with other people. Same goes for cells. Unicellular organisms have very, very little communication to other cells of the same type. In us, on the other hand, come on, we have a lot of intercellular signaling going on, right? That's the main difference. Okay. Archaea, they're not in the picture. Shape-wise, look-wise, they're almost indistinguishable from bacteria. But as we will learn later, they are fundamentally different. They're also unicellular, they're also prokaryotic, they don't have nucleus, they don't have organelles, but somehow they're very much different from bacteria. Algae, you can see the diatom algae here in that photograph. Some of them are unicellular. Have you seen any? I mean, not just single cell, but anyone saw the blooms in the ponds and lakes? That's unicellular algae growing up. Billions and billions of cells. Okay, and on the other hand, you can swim through the lake and that long freaky thing touches your leg and you scream like the, I don't know, monster tries to pull you down under the water. That's also algae. It's going to be multicellular. Okay, so they can be both. We're not looking at multicellular, of course. We're actually going to be talking very little about algae because they have almost no clinical relevance, which does not mean they are unimportant. They're just not clinically important. They actually have a huge industrial importance. Protozoa. So they are eukaryotic, but they are ultimately unicellular. Any protozoans that you know? That not on the slide. Amoeba. There you go. Amoeba. Unicellular protozoan. Okay, this amoeba can be pathogenic. This guy is called Giardia lamblia. It's a protozoan that causes disease with the great name beaver's fever. Transmitted from beavers indirectly to water. You can catch it if you go out there into the forest and start drinking water from the creeks, especially the ones that where beavers dwell. Okay, very unpleasant disease, chronic diarrhea. Fungi, eukaryotic. Well, all of them. Unicellular. Well, we're going to focus on unicellular ones. When anyone does mushroom hunting, well, you saw mushrooms, right? Those are fungi, same fungi. Not same, but essentially they belong to the same class. Technically speaking, same kingdom. Okay? They're big, you can eat them. We're not going to focus on those multicellular mushrooms. It's not a toxicology class, or culinary arts for that matter. We're going to talk about unicellular like yeast. or different types of molds. Helminths, the only multicellular organism. Sorry, still recovering. The only multicellular organism that we're going to chat about. They're worms. You can see two examples. That picture. So this is Tinea saginata, the beef tapeworm. Can infect humans pretty long. This is Dracunculus medinensis, almost eradicated. It's a worm that was pretty common in Africa. And actually in this picture, you see the match? The poor fella pulls out the worm out of the wound by rolling it on the match. It's a long and really tedious process. You must not break it, because if you break the worm, it dies. When it dies, your immune system destroys it, and it's painful. Very, very painful. I have a special place for worms in my heart. Not literally. Okay. But some dogs have literally a special place for worms in their heart. Heartworm? Yeah. Yes. That's called neurocysticercosis. Technically, it's not worm. It's larva of the worm. They crawl out of intestines and may end up in the brains. If you want to see an example, first episode, first season of House MD is about neurocysticercosis. Viruses. Obviously, since I've been working on them for so long, they're on top of my list of favorite microbes. Now, they are acellular. Don't have cell. Okay? You can see coronavirus. The type that cause diseases, different viruses belonging to that group, caused SARS, MERS, now. And this is Ebola. I don't think there is any person in this room who did not hear about Ebola virus. Right? I call it much ado about nothing. Seriously. And we'll have a chance to discuss why it was blown out of proportion. Now, different branches of microbiology study different things, and bacteriology, virology, helminthology, and protozoology are pretty obvious, right? You take a name of the microbe and you add ology. Now, mycology studies fungi. Phycology studies algae. Okay. Now, take home message from that particular thing is, but what do you have to know? Sorry. You have to know the distinctive features: unicellular, acellular, multicellular, prokaryotes or eukaryotes for each type of microbe. Does that make sense? So if you get a question, which of those microbes is prokaryotic, and you get virus, helminth, bacteria, and fungi, what's the answer? Bacteria, yes. Because virus is not cellular. Speaking of viruses, what are the signature characteristics of living things? Come on. So does this computer. Bacteria don't have nucleus, but they're alive. What do they do with it? They convert it. Okay, so but this computer also, it sure as hell it converts electric energy into heat. Yes. They do metabolism. Well, in essence, that's energy conversion. This computer does it. So far, this is live. Yes, robots can do that as well. Huh? Good. I will have hard time arguing against it. DNA, yes. They all have to have DNA. Some viruses have DNA. Virus is a tricky thing. What is the fundamental feature of all living organisms on Earth? They're categorized as living. They all consist of something. Cells. They're all cellular. It's one, we kind of agreed on that living things consist of cells. Viruses don't, so they're not living. If I will take a virus, place it right here, well, is it going to do something? It's just going to be sitting there. It's cannot replicate outside of the cell. Okay, is that clear? Now I'm going to ask you a trick question. Anyone gardens? Okay, awesome. Do you buy seeds for gardening? Yeah, okay. So imagine you have seeds, you put them on the table. You leave them on the table. What happens to them? Nothing. Huh? Yeah, they're going to stay seeds, right? Are they living? Good. I like the answer. Yes, no. I mean, you put them there. Nothing happens to them. They do not convert energy. They have no metabolism by themselves. They do not reproduce. What else they don't do? They don't do nothing, right? They just sit there. They do have DNA. They do consist of cells. But other than that. But if you place them in the soil, what's going to happen to them? Excellent. They're going to give rise to a life. Actual organism, right? If you take a virus, put it in the cell is going to be changed completely. So although viruses are considered to be non-living things, more and more virologists now turn towards kind of two forms of virus existence. One is a particle, non-living, and another is virus-infected cell, which essentially manifestation of virus life. Does that make sense? It's more of a philosophical question, but it's neat to think about it. For me, the question, importance of microbes, is redundant. They are everywhere. I would bet that there is no surface on Earth, depending on how small the surface is. In Antarctica, we may survey a larger space, but there's probably not a place on Earth that is free of microbes. Okay? No, seriously. Unless you count volcanic craters, this place, in this case, I lose the bet. Okay? But soil, trees, water, stone, everything has microbes. They're absolutely ubiquitous. One of my favorite examples, La Brea tar pits, close to Los Angeles. Yes. 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 It's but it's hot, right? It's pretty hot. There are microbes in that melted tar. Okay, so they are everywhere. How important are they? Well, if not for microbes, we would be neck deep in dead bodies. They're major scavengers. They're major decomposers, okay? They destroy things. That's really an important thing. Actually, have you heard about Dead Bodies Farm in Tennessee? Do watch. You've heard of it? Exactly. Exactly. So when you watch those crime scene investigation TV shows, and the guy says, oh, this guy was killed like 3 months ago, how does he know? Well, because we know what happens to the human body when it decomposes. Of course, they don't kill anyone. They just take dead people and place them in different environments and look how they decompose. Well, we have microbes on us and in us. And as we decompose, the microbial populations change. And it's another way to look at the process of decomposition. It's fascinating, actually. Industrial application of microbes, which we're not going to talk about a lot, but any beer lovers here? Beer? Oh yeah, beer. Think microbes. There are a lot of studies on microbiome of breweries. It changes actually from the time breweries open to the time it functions, full time. The microbiome of the floor changes. There's different bacteria in the water, on the malt, hops. It will all contribute. If you would look at the funding that goes into the wine industry in France, not I mean wine industry, but microbiology of grapes, it's huge. They study how microbes that live on the grapes change from, say, one side of the hill to another side of the hill, from dry year to wet year. And they try to come up with maybe some starter kit to make perfect wine. Does that make sense? Bread, a lot of foods, cheese, a lot of foods, sauerkraut, product of fermentation. Okay, nail polish, acetone based. Think microbes. They make acetone. A lot of things are made by microbes. And of course, diseases. If you would look at this chart, what immediately catches the eye, and I took it from WHO website, leading causes of death in the world. What immediately catches the eye is respiratory infection, HIV, diarrhea. Okay, those four are definitely, it's infectious. Okay, include influenza, different types of pneumonia, and so on and so forth. COPD, well, COPD is mostly smoking, but let's look at the heart disease and stroke. It's essentially a vascular disease. Can microbes contribute to it? They probably do contribute to it. There's an association, for example, between people who have caries, the dental caries, and the risk of cardiovascular disease. So it probably means caries is infectious disease. It's bacterial disease, okay? So association between what type of bacteria you have in your mouth and what is your risk to die from stroke or from heart disease. So microbes can contribute to that, right? There's another thing. We're going to talk about this later and then we're going to take a break. What's worse than death? Well, it's not based on your or mine personal experience. What do you think is actually maybe worse than death? Suffering from the disease. You know how now we discuss euthanasia? Well, we talk about terminally ill patients, right? Think about this. About 1/3 of world population is infected with helminths. And symptoms can vary from very mild, not noticeable, to anemia and growth retardation and other horrible things that happen to them. Symptoms can include things like malaria. Okay, take malaria. Yes, we do have about 300,000-400,000 people dying each year. Is that horrible? Sure. We have hundreds of millions sick with that. People who have that disease chronically. Every 3 days, you're going to have chills, high fever, just going to feel incredibly crappy. So you're not going to go to work, your income is going to suffer, your life quality is going to suffer. Does that make sense? So this is what we call morbidity rather than mortality. Infectious microbes have a huge impact on human lives, the quality of human lives. Does that make sense? So that's another aspect. We're going to focus mostly on the clinically relevant microbes. Okay, when we finally end up talking about microbial species, we're going to talk about clinically relevant ones. Let's take a break. When we'll come back, we'll chat about taxonomy and other stuff.